artist decides to portray dreams in their art is something I will never not find interesting. There's just something about the atmospheres and vibes that are brought out of an artist when they're trying to craft a dreamlike setting or trying to recreate something they saw in their dreams that I really love. Something like Yume Nikki with its surreal, barren wastelands that only sometimes actually represent something recognizable. Or something like Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, whose songs are mostly based off the vibes and music that Richard himself created in his own dreams. Allegedly. Anything this man says is maybe like a 50% chance of being true. Or maybe something that relates in a more interesting way, like Sleep Feeling, whose dreamy washes of sound are meant to lull you to sleep and accompany you through it. Or maybe just something simple, like just a quick little mock-up image of a setting or item that you came across in a dream. It's all just so interesting to me. I guess I love just dream culture in general. I love how free they are, how they don't have to abide by any real guidelines, how none of it has to be grounded in any kind of reality. And I love hearing about other people's dreams, and I again love art that intends to evoke similar feelings you experience while dreaming. I love trying to look into them and thinking about what kind of dreams the given artist has and wondering how they relate to dreams I've had. It's fun, and despite how completely incomprehensible dreams can sometimes be, there's still something so oddly human and personal about them and their artistic representations. A really big, well-known example, Yume Nikki, is one that, despite not really being relatable to me and my experiences, I still really enjoy playing. I absolutely love the game's soundtrack, and something about exploring the game is admittedly a little relaxing and cathartic for me, as long as it's not going scary mode, obviously. And even though I haven't really spent too much time in it, I still seriously advocate for this game and you playing it if you're interested. But I'm no Yume Nikki scholar, right? I've played it enough to see a lot of really interesting stuff and form a pretty respectable appreciation for it. But I also haven't played enough to really call myself too knowledgeable in the game as a whole. But there is a game similar to Yume Nikki that I have been able to sink so much of my time into, and also resonates with me and my dreaming experiences so heavily, for reasons I'll get into later. And it's B3313, which for the sake of simplicity right now is just Yume Nikki, but if it was Beta Mario 64. Or more accurately, the internet's idea of Beta Mario 64. You know, that whole every copy is personalized type creepypasta stuff that was making the rounds in like 2020. In case you lived under the roof of your beautiful suburban household, there was a little creepypasta thing going around in the early 2020s surrounding Mario 64 betas, saying that it would use AI technology to personalize your game experience, and there was like a big Wario head. And to be honest, the rest's a blur, but since then there have been multiple beta-inspired hacks, some faithful and some sinful. But the one that sticks out to me the most is B3313, or Build 3313. But I'll mostly be referring to it as just B3, because it's easier. Before I start talking about it, I gotta mention 3 specific things. 1, if you haven't played B3, I'd highly recommend playing it at least a little bit before continuing. This hack is way better experience completely blind, so if you have no idea what this even is, please just go play it for yourself. It's free and really easy to install. I'll leave a link to a video on how to get SM64 hacks set up in the description, so go there. If you play a little bit of it and don't really get it or like it, watch this and hear me talk about why I like it, I guess. I don't know. I also think this hack is a lot better experienced at night, so yeah, do that if you want. Secondly, keep in mind that because this game has no progression or linearity, I have no idea how to structure this video in a way that doesn't jump around a lot from topic to topic. So it's gonna do that. Anyways, B3, while it does have a complete official finished version, a majority of this video will be spent discussing version 0.7, as that was the most recent official version of the game at the time I began playing, and where I got the most out of the game. I'll discuss my thoughts on 1.0 later. Let's just start, you know? Just jump into this pussy first, you know what I'm saying? Just jump into it. Dicks out. You know what I'm saying? Starting the game up, you're greeted with a message that reads,
"Welcome to Mario Wonderland. If you're the adventurous sort, pay a visit to the castle ahead."
This isn't anything really important, it's just like a cute greeting. But it does introduce the kind of language the game likes to use, like referring to itself as Mario Wonderland, or the show as it will later be called. And just like generally using very off dialogue a lot of the time. Stuff like these differences in vocabulary I like to interpret as some weird translation quirk, like when everything was directly translated from Japanese to English, certain words lost their specific meanings and context or something. I don't know. It also just makes certain moments more off-putting, like when a door very ominously says 1 star left, instead of something silly or friendly like how most dialogue is in SM64. It just makes the hack feel so much more distant from the actual SM64. It's made even more alien by the really strange font they chose. Anyways, moving around, it's clear there are a few changes to Mario's physics and movement. the most immediately apparent and helpful change being how much floatier he is. Some other changes are the triple jump putting you into the spinning state, which is something pulled from beta footage, ground pound being instant, health regeneration over time, not being able to turn when floating idly in water, the ability to fly without a wing cap after being shot out of a cannon, and the attack combo being slightly different. Looking at the game, it's very clear a lot of time went into remaking the beta content. A good number of areas you'll visit in the beginning are pretty accurate recreations of certain courses shown in the original Shoshinkai beta, and the original areas each replicate the art style pretty well. The colors are a lot bolder too, especially on Mario. There were also a few beta mechanics added in, like the ability to play as Luigi by pressing L while outside the castle, and stuff like keys being in the ghost house levels. It even has the cute dancing flowers sprinkled across some levels. I like these things. Sound effects have been changed as well, Mario's voice probably being the most prominent example alongside the sound that plays when a star appears, which I honestly kind of like more than the sound in the actual game. Also, one thing I have to mention that's really cute to me is how the bonus stars work.
Okay, I'm coming in because I really don't know where I got this bonus stars thing from, and I don't know what made me connect it with what I'm about to talk about. It's like I remember it so vividly, but I don't know where it's even coming from. But just pretend instead of bonus stars, I'm just talking about like regular stars, and just like, yeah, I think it still works what I'm saying, and it's still cute. Another cute detail to me that I don't even know if it's intentional. It might even just be an actual bug and not like some like intended bug. Whatever. Okay. Okay, yeah, I don't know. Just pretend I'm talking about, like, normal stars, and, yeah. Pretty emblematic of what this game does to you, though, so.
For context, most stars don't have any names. The little space that usually displays the star name is almost always empty. But certain ones will say that you got a bonus star. All of these so-called bonus stars are stored on this flat plane that you're just warped to whenever you get close to one of the bonus stars. How I interpret this is the developer, instead of just coding the specific stars to be bonus stars, just puts a hitbox around them that takes you to an area that specifically holds bonus stars, because for some reason they couldn't put the bonus stars in regular courses. This might seem like nothing, but as someone who used to make games in Click Team and had to find really dumb solutions to problems I had no idea how to fix, this is a really cute world building detail. And for an example, one time I was trying to make an I Wanna Be the Guy fan game, because I was really into those at the time, and I couldn't get checkpoints to work, so since the game was just screen by screen, each screen would have its own individual set of spikes that were each programmed to respawn you to the beginning of its respective screen. So there were just like 15 different identical copies of the spike asset, with the only difference being where they respawned you if you touched it. It was horrible, and to make matters worse, you couldn't rotate the objects, or maybe I just didn't know how to. So there are actually 4 spike objects for each screen, each of them just at a different orientation. I'd love to show it, but sadly this fan game is at tier 5 of the Kona Lost Media iceberg. Anyways, heading into the castle, you're greeted with the original castle design shown in the 1995 Shoshinkai prototype. Instinctively, I feel like most people will go to the far left door, which usually contains the painting for Bob-omb Battlefield, but instead it's the painting for an early version of Cool Cool Mountain. Once you're through, you're welcomed by a message that reads,
If you want to feel the wind on your back, try jumping in the hole on the left. The sensation can't be beat.
Jumping into this hole takes you to the TTM slide, which was originally planned to be for this level, interestingly enough. After finishing the slide, you're taken to the bottom of the mountain with a star. How neat. Also, the penguin model is really cute. It's not faithful to the actual beta model, but like, I don't care. They're so silly. They're so silly. Look at it. Okay, anyways, you got your first star, awesome, but now where are you? Instead of popping out of the painting, you're placed into this hallway. A hallway that you will become very accustomed to by the end of your playthrough, since this is where you're dropped off every time you grab a star. Here there are 2 doors, one at each end. The door on the lower end takes you back down to the ground lobby, so now you know this hallway isn't too far away from where you started. That's nice. And let's say you decide to go back to the CCM-like course you were just in, only to realize that not only is the painting different, but so is the course itself. Now is where I assume it'll really set in what kind of game this is. Luckily for you, the only part of the castle that actually changes is the main lobby. There are 4 variations of it and each has different courses. You can manually travel between these lobbies in the pause menu through the HAHAH's fast travel system, which I'll explain now. Pressing A in the pause menu will cause you to immediately warp to another lobby variation. You don't have any control over which one you go to, but you'll always fast travel in the same cycle. So fast traveling in lobby A takes you to lobby B, and fast traveling in lobby B takes you to lobby C, etc. I really love this system because it's just so stupid and confusing at first, because it just doesn't give you any indication of how it even works or what's even happening whenever you fast travel. It's funny. I like it. So that's that, but let's say you went to the door on the upper end of the hallway we were talking about like 40 minutes ago. This takes you to the Plexel upstairs, a completely original area not based on anything community made or from the actual beta. That's another thing. This game includes a lot of fan-made hubs and courses into itself, since there's only so much official beta Mario content that exists. I really like this aspect of the game. It makes it feel like a collection of an entire community's worth of work all shown off in this one big thing. It's cool, and a hack that was inspired by B3 even had some of its courses put into the final version of it, which is also cool. Anyways, the Plexel upstairs is the point where this game really starts branching out and getting messy. This area alone has 3 different doors that each lead to an entirely new hub, so whether or not you decide to take the lower door or the upper door, what this game is and how it's played should really set in. Which is why I should talk about that now. So I will. This game is heavily based off the internal plexus theory, which is related to how the outside of the castle in SM64 doesn't accurately depict how it is internally. It's impossible for this castle to actually hold its 3 floors. So that begs the question, is the inside of the castle just infinite space that can hold as much as it wants and isn't restricted by the bounds of its own walls? The answer is yes. And this cute little theory thingy is stretched to an insane extent, as the B3 castle houses 31 distinct hub areas, all of them tied together similarly to the nervous system. This endless complex array of hallways that branch out and reconnect back to each other, hence why the word plexus is used a lot in the game. Okay, I thought of this just like literally like 2 seconds ago, like just now. Like the way plexus is used to describe the game could also like indicate the castle might be like some living, breathing organism or something. I just thought that's fun to consider. So you're just kind of like let loose in this giant castle with the ability to go basically through any door you want and enter any course you want. No progression or locked doors that require a specific amount of stars, excluding the door to the final level. Just 31 different hubs out in the open to go to with nothing and nobody to direct or guide you. And remember, on top of this monstrously large castle with basically no indication of which door leads where, you're also taken all the way back to that hallway after every star, just to make creating a mental map even harder. That's really the main goal, that mental map, remembering, not letting the overwhelming scale of the castle get the better of you. That alongside obviously getting stars. And with stars, you gotta have courses, right? You know, a lot of these courses are left looking unfinished to keep in line with the whole beta thing, whether it just be an unfinished version of a level from the final game or just some kind of test room. A majority of the courses are like this, and even though a lot of them really are nothing special and have nothing of value to really talk about, I feel like the minimalistic nothing beta courses are a really important part of the game. Not only because they're good at making you go completely insane, but they also make the few special courses stand out even more. When playing B3, you'll probably come across a few courses that really stick with you, for one reason or another, and for me there are 2 big ones. I'll start with the one that less people care about, Creepy Cove. If you're wondering, this is the level I made that community post about like 5 years ago. Entering the level, it doesn't really seem like much, and that's because it isn't. It's literally just a small little cove with some water and platforms, but there was something about the music and the colors and the thick blue fog that in the moment just kind of struck me. It felt cold, but in a very tranquil and soothing way. It reminds me of this Daniel Caesar album cover. For a game so confusing, it was kind of nice to have this one very serene moment, one where I could just exist in this area. I really hadn't expected a game like this to give that kind of feeling, and this was honestly the level that made me realize that this game is something worth talking about. Something I should share my thoughts on in some way. It's what made me make this video. The music is a composition made by Nusup Kaizo 55 called Wet Dry Docks, and it's a combination of the songs for Dire Dire Docks and Wet Dry World, and it's probably the best song in 0.7. It sets the perfect vibe for the level, very moody and melancholic. It honestly is half the reason I loved the level so much. It just made the course even more comforting. I remember getting so lost in this place that I couldn't remember where I'd gone to get here, and I wondered if I'd ever find this cove again. But in that moment, honestly, I didn't really care. Maybe it was better that way. It's a feeling I've never experienced in any game, and it's just because the nature of the game allows that kind of thought to enter your mind. the thought that you may never find this place again, as it's buried within the endless doors of the castle. It's one of the things I love the most about this game. Now, Creepy Cove isn't hard to get to at all. It's literally the first thing you see when entering the Plexel upstairs, but still, the fact that I was able to forget something so easy to remember is very striking. The second level I want to mention is Dry Town. Dry Town takes place in a version of Wet Dry World long before it was flooded. It's a very small and quaint town with little houses, a castle, a bigger house, and a couple of bombs to talk to. One of them has something very important to say to you.
The mystery is of wet or dry. And where does the solution lie? The city welcomes visitors with the depth they bring as they enter.
This piece of dialogue encompasses the whole story behind the level. If you're unfamiliar with this game, taking the pipe on top of the house up to the tower that holds the star triggers a switch that floods the entire town, which gives the impression that the star at the top of the tower acts as a kind of protection. It keeps the city from flooding, and since no one in the city can get to the top of the castle to protect it in any way, they just have to hope whoever enters the city doesn't try and take it, hence welcoming visitors with the depth they bring as they enter. That one Bob-omb isn't the only one with dialogue though. This other one inside the house just shows extreme resentment towards you, calling you a monster and telling you to leave them alone before you inevitably flood their home. Everyone here is afraid of you, they hate you, all of them hide away in their houses in fear. They know you won't stop and leave them alone because you've been collecting stars the entire game. And if Dry Town isn't an outlier, then you've been draining basically every course of all of its power and protection, except in this case, instead of nameless Bowser goons, it's actual people you'll be affecting. The music, which is the same as in Creepy Cove, is now given a much more desolate and bleak feeling, compared to Creepy Cove, which made the music feel more like a warm blanket. It's so bleak, the Bob-omb's just sitting and waiting for their time to be taken away from them. The only thing they can really do is try coaxing you into leaving them alone. So you're kind of given a choice here. You can take the star and leave the town defenseless, or you can just leave and let it be. To add on to this, there's a level deeper in the castle that's a version of Dry Town, probably many years after it was flooded, now infested with skeeters and no sign of any Bob-omb life. And I think it's cool that this game has this little smaller story contained within itself. I really like it. Also, I didn't know about this before when I was writing, but I was like trying to get footage of like dialogue and stuff for the section earlier, and I went into this level that was like this like little Bob-omb's battlefield kind of place that was an escape. That like Bob-omb told me like he was escaping from me after Dry Town flooded, and he's like, go away and shit, you know, you killed my whole family, I hate you, you know, leave. And like I didn't even know about that, so like even after writing how many 14,392 words about this damn game, I still, you know, haven't found everything. I also want to mention some of the less important courses that I just like. This one called Big Boo's Haunted Forest is one of my favorites. It makes me really happy that this game can include scary levels that still fit within the realm of a Mario game, because this is also a horror game, by the way. I haven't mentioned that. The gothic architecture, red fog, and music all work very nicely together to make a silly, spooky level that still keeps a playful tone, and it feels very authentic. I'll just go over here. Oh! Another notable one is Eel Graveyard. It's very similar to Creepy Cove, but also not at all. Like, it has a similar atmosphere, but it's not as empty. It takes on a bit more of an actual theme with its eels. It's one of the more surreal levels. Really, any level that is based off Jolly Roger Bay or the aquarium is a favorite of mine. Something about water in this hack just does something to me, man. I don't know, it's so tranquil. It made me realize how much I like the aesthetics and atmospheres of the original versions too. A course type that I wish showed up more often is the nothing happens and there's nothing here type of course. The only example I can really think of is Peach's Cake, which is a big cake on a flat plane with a black skybox, and if you touch the cake you die. There's literally nothing to do here. It's one of my favorite areas in the game. So to talk about this game's aesthetic would be completely impossible without bringing up the let's call it liminal space movement that influenced a lot of the creations that would influence this creation. If you aren't familiar with any of what I just said, man, don't worry, because I'm here for you, and I love you. Liminal space is basically like an umbrella term to describe areas that depict transition from one thing to another, either physically, a lot of popular examples are of hallways and doors, or emotionally, representing a shift in mental state, like an old playground depicting a change from young baby to brittle-boned ancient fossil. These spaces are usually accompanied by the absence of any people helps give them their surreal feeling and makes them seem more like something you'd see in a dream rather than real life. They can get a little bit crazy too. They don't have to depict anything recognizable or even anything at all. There's this album, R+7 by Oneohtrix Point Never, that I really like, where it's just like a blank room with a window and a doorway and like a little yellow block thing. Anyways, in the early 2020s or so, these just became massively popular, inspiring countless works of art taking inspiration from these nothing places. And a few of them were related to Mario 64 in its beta, which, despite how silly it sounds, is not too surprising. I mean, this game checks off the 2 requirement boxes for liminality. The hub is a series of hallways and corridors with barely anyone around, and it's a game that, like, everyone ever grew up playing, or played for the first time when they were little at least. Like, no matter your birth year, it's just like one of those things, I guess, I don't know. The betas themselves also have these really specific qualities to them, the obvious unfinishedness, the less realistic color palette, the fact that all the footage of it looks like this. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? So with all that being said, let's talk about why I'm a geek-ass bitch and I eat this shit up like it's no one's business. I know that liminal is like a bit of a bad word now, I guess. It feels like most people think it's kind of corny, and as an aesthetic, it's almost lost all relevancy. But I feel like bringing it up and talking about it because not only do I still think it's a neat aesthetic that's simultaneously subdued and evocative, but B3 is also just a standout in the liminal genre, you could say. And it uses them really tastefully and in a way that doesn't feel intrusive. It's very naturally baked into the game's identity and aesthetics. It just feels as naturally implemented as an art style would. It's just this one guy's art style. That's what it is. It's just that. You know what I'm saying? It also just appeals to me specifically as someone who derives more feelings of hospitality and nostalgia from these things instead of discomfort. This game, excluding the horror parts obviously, feels like it's catering a lot more towards that audience instead. It has a very relaxed vibe, and the music never makes the surrealness of its world out to be a big deal. It's just treated so normally, which could even make it more unnerving for people who are creeped out by these already. But at the same time, it also appeals to little me, someone who finds a decent amount of comfort from both liminal spaces generally and this hack. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's made a little spooky, and yeah, it's confusing and hard to navigate, but most of the time just running around the castle or a given hub is a very peaceful experience, and getting enveloped by it and lost in it just makes it even better. I find most of the courses, even ones that don't hit me as hard as Creepy Cove, to still just be so pleasant to be in. How minimalistic everything is, the aesthetics, how dreamy it all feels, it speaks to me heavily. I was put into like childlike state almost, not really having to think at all, just being able to exist somewhere. Like, honestly, ignoring the obvious horror influences, this hack is so oddly cute. Like, it's this little dream world based around a Mario game that you just let loose in, and that's cute, right? Like, I'm not crazy. Maybe I am. Looking back on my play sessions, I don't think I've ever felt more like a stupid, helpless baby who didn't know what was going on, and the overall aesthetics and way the game looks helped a lot with that feeling. I really like this grassy version of CCM that has the same exact aura as those old Herobrine pictures, and any other level that has fog, especially colorful fog, I really loved. Like, seriously, playing this game has made me realize how much I just adore fog, especially in low poly environments. The way it interacts with the land, turning faraway structures into deep silhouettes, is genuinely divine. In 1.0, there's this version of the castle outside you can get to with this thick gray layer of fog, and it's just like laughing gas in visual form. I don't know how else to explain it. This place also reminds me of this Delazir EP cover, and I adore that EP, so it just enhances the experience more for me. I didn't even know Mario 64 had fog in it, but it is perfect for a game like this. So like, yeah, I just generally really love this game's whole aesthetic and identity, but I don't know how many people would agree with me. Liminal spaces being used and me referring to the game as liminal would probably make a good amount of people roll their eyes. And like, yeah, I get it, but I feel like bringing it up because B3 is really just a breath of fresh air, and probably my favorite use of liminality in any piece of art I've seen. It works really well combined with the gameplay and adds a lot to how strange and dreamy the game is. It's cool to just run around these little nothing zone areas that feel like they aren't baked all the way, something you'd only see in a weird blurry photo, something you only see in a dream where you're playing Mario 64. It's a neat experience, one I find really comforting as well. And on top of this, I just generally think most of the liminal areas are just really memorable and well designed. So yeah, that's all for this part. I hope I said that good. If you remember, around 60 years ago at the start of the video, I mentioned that dreams are cool and awesome and all that stuff. And I mentioned that all the way back 60 years ago because I think B3313 portrays that feeling of a dream so well, beyond the fact it's just confusing and weird and doesn't make any sense. So now I'm going to go and talk about that and explain why I've been referring to this game as a dream instead of an AI personalized beta, whatever you want to call it. For one, the little changes to how Mario moves. All the most prominent ones seem to be related to how it feels to dream. How he's much floatier, which is self-explanatory. He can't turn idly in water, which makes it feel very restrictive. Like how in dreams, sometimes even the simplest tasks are sluggish or even impossible. Moves looking or acting entirely different can make it seem like it was misremembered. And when standing still, he falls asleep way faster than usual. This doesn't relate in the same way the others did, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Some of the things I talked about earlier, like the sound effects and textures being different, really captures the vibe of your brain trying to replicate something it's familiar with and just getting small details wrong. This idea is also developed further in the structure and design of the courses themselves. Many of them do feel like a recreation of something that someone had seen in one of their dreams. This attempt to piece together something you only remember a few key parts to. It's like my favorite tweet of all time, but in a real, tangible digital form. The hubs really stand out in this regard, like the Crescent Castle as it's called. It's so empty and the structuring feels like it's designed to be as unorthodox as possible. And the blue bricks being the only texture used for the walls doesn't make it any easier to navigate. Bowser's floor is also like this, but instead of being recreated by the person who dreamt it, it's like if a machine just took exactly how it looked like in the dream and just converted it into the game. The main room is actually pretty coherent and sensible. It has a structure and clear points of interest. The doors to your left bring to other rooms and the door straight ahead is blocked by bricks. But the second you head down the hallway to your right, it just turns into this mess of shapes and walls, the halls and pathways giving off the illusion that they actually lead you somewhere, but ultimately go nowhere. I mean, there are things here, a star, a hole, and this toad statue, but they're all just set up randomly with no meaning or purpose aside from just existing in a space. These toad statues usually act as little centerpieces placed somewhere that makes them feel important. So why is this one just here off to the side? Stars usually require you to do something or go to a level to get them, so why is this star just here in the hub? Why is this hole here? Why does this carpet run along the grass? Where did the ceiling go? Reminds me again of dreaming. Like, most of the hub was made pretty coherently, but the rest of it is just this mush that doesn't even make any sense. Your brain just didn't know what to do with this area, I guess. It feels like it wasn't even meant to be explored, just some asset salad to fill up the empty space of your dream. The song playing in this area too is so unfocused and cluttered, but almost there, almost in unison. Like, this hub really feels like it just thinks it's in order, like it makes any sense, but it really just doesn't, which is exactly how dreaming feels. Like, in the moment you don't question it, but in reality everything you're seeing is just asset salad. It's mush, a few key set pieces connected together by incoherency. And I think that's really cool and interesting, and I think that this hub really captures such a niche, weird vibe really well. As for actual courses that I'd like to point out, TikTok Blogs gives us a similar vibe to another very dreamlike game, uhmmm, with its checker pattern floors and completely blacked out skybox. Black skyboxes are actually one of my favorite little things this game likes to do. I can recount numerous dreams where the sky was just completely pitch black. It also gives off the same feeling as noticing that your blinds are open when it's nighttime, especially in areas that you should be familiar with, like this variant of Hazy Maze Cave in version 1.0. I could keep listing examples. I could probably just go over every level in the game, but I think I want to move on and talk about the ways this game goes about making these levels feel so dreamlike just as a whole. The liminal thing is obviously the prime example, and the fact that the game never usually acknowledges it or acts like it's creepy or weird really helps with that. But I also really like this thing it does where it has these levels that are kind of collages of things from levels in SM64. It's done pretty frequently too, like Dry Town has this big house from Rainbow Ride and the Wingcap Tower just here, a part of this world. No longer is it a silly, whimsical floating house, it's repurposed as this cozy, campfire-lit abode. And I find this reusing of assets in different contexts to be very interesting, and once I caught on to it, it became one of my favorite aspects of the game. Sometimes levels will start off exactly like one from SM64, but then just start diverging into its own thing. Like this level that starts off with the slide into the Vanish Cap course before just turning into something completely different. Something that still sort of retains the vibe and structure of the Vanish Cap stage. Sometimes the area is just built around whatever asset it's using, and sometimes it's just kind of there in the background, or it's just some random thing that's just been pasted into this environment. I feel like a similar thing is done in Dreams, where it's just this random mush of places, people, and things that you've seen and remember. Like an airport that's randomly connected to your house and is also run by Zeronium, like your old school that just has a pool in it now, like a mall that looks like the one from Complete Squad and has Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in it. Just this mixture of things you've seen throughout your life, sometimes slightly different in color or vibe or appearance, sometimes exactly the same, just kind of clobbered together into some new thing. It's really neat how this game goes about portraying that. I don't even know if it was intentional, but it just adds so much to its ethos, and it speaks to me really heavily. Now that I'm thinking about all this stuff, I've come to the conclusion that the texture work also does something pretty similar to this. It feels like a mishmash of textures taken from different places, a lot of them in completely different art styles to each other. Some go for a realistic look and others are heavily stylized and cartoony. It helps that each texture is usually similar to one that's in the actual game, making it so they all get across the same general idea as the base game textures, and so the areas feel like something that could actually exist in SM64 but are just a little bit off. Adds a lot to this feeling that this is a weird recreation that your brain conjured in your sleep. Mario's voice, I think, also does this. I know all voice lines were taken from the same place, but some of them just sound like they were from completely different voice actors. It doesn't help that the voices themselves just seem so fake. Like, I can't imagine a person actually recording any of these voice lines. They feel so weird. They feel AI. They feel what? What's crazier is this isn't even anything intentional the hack did. No, these are just the placeholder voice lines Nintendo themselves picked for Mario before they hired an actual voice actor. And the hack just used those since that's what it's recreating, but somehow it's so integral to the whole vibe of the hack. It's interesting to me. I like it. The final design quirk of the game I want to mention is the scaling. Rooms of the castle are disproportionately large, especially compared to the very tight-knit castle from... It makes every single part of the castle feel so empty. Nothing really ever fills up the space, so you're just left with these vast, vacant plains connected by stairs and hallways that rarely ever change in elevation or shape. Again, relating to my dreams, I've had some where there's no ceiling and the walls just extend infinitely up, or rooms are just very, very big. I can't believe I didn't think of this and write about it, until literally just now. But the rooms being so big and the ceilings being so high also makes you feel like a baby, like a kid, when you're a kid, every room just seems so large for some reason. Well, there is a reason, because you're fucking 2 feet tall, but I don't know, and I think that's cool and really fits in well with the hack and its vibe. I really like it. I don't know how I didn't think of it beforehand, but yeah. So those are all the standout aesthetic choices that aid in developing the game's theme, but there's a specific game mechanic that is, in my opinion, one of the most important aspects of B3. That being the fact that you're sent back to that hallway connecting the main lobby and Plexel upstairs every single time you get a star. This is so cool to me because of the way it makes you forget a lot of the places you've been to, and some of them start becoming these fading memories that you swear you've seen and been to, but you just cannot find them again, as they're buried within the castle. These places that you really only got to explore one time before being booted back to the hallway and just you never found again. I remember this one area I'd seen in version 0.7 that was an outer section of the castle. Everything had a blue tint and there was a peach painting in the center of the castle wall. And I probably went to this place maybe twice, but I can never find it again, ever. And it became this thing in my mind that I was always thinking about when playing the game, trying to find it again, but I was never able to. It was like it had been removed from existence or something. It was weird. Now I present to you my raw, unfiltered, earth-shattering reaction to finding this area again in version 0.9. This door isn't anything specific to 0.9, it's there in 0.7. I either just missed it when passing by or didn't go into it because I assumed it wouldn't take me anywhere interesting. I really don't think any other game has made me obsess so much over such a nothing area. Made me care so much about just going back and being in a space again, not for any reason besides me just enjoying the pure act of existing in it. No other game has had an area that just stuck with me to a point where I'd think about it every single time I played it, wondering if I'd ever reconnect with this weird, fleeting memory. That's what makes this whole thing work, that desire to see something again, that desire to just go back to a place that for one reason or another stood out to you in some way, to just see it again, or just to know what else it holds. There's this intrigue attached to every hub and every course. Like, you want to see what other courses there are, you want to see what other things you can find, you want to just exist here again. It's so cool. I don't know how else to put it. I also love this mechanic because it really emphasizes creating a good mental map of the castle, which is something that is as difficult as it is fun. Understanding the castle layout more and more is such a satisfying yet short-lived feeling. It is unbelievably easy to completely forget your entire mental map after like a day of not playing, or if you end up finding too many areas and it all gets muddied. Even after having spent probably 15 to 20 hours in 0.7, I am still not really confident at all in the mental map I've created, and I basically have to relearn the game every time I open it. And I think that is so cool, how it makes you think this hard and really put focus into it while you play. It's nice. I think it's cool. I feel like another thing that just really makes me love the game more is its soundtrack. It's not like LSD or Yume Nikki. There aren't a lot of pure ambient tracks, which is in my opinion a good thing. I'm not sure they'd work in the context of this hack, and I think calling away from the inherent Mario-ness of the game would make the hack a lot less effective as a whole. It heavily reuses and manipulates melodies from songs across all Mario games, twisting and mashing them together into new songs. My favorite example of this has to be the theme for Drive Town. The wet dry world motif is integrated so well and so subtly into the song, and its context is completely changed from goofy, silly underground maze to my home is being taken away from me and I can't do anything about it. I think that's part of the reason why the two levels that use the song stood out to me so much. If they had used, say, a completely original song that perfectly sold the same vibe, I don't think I'd find it nearly as captivating. The recognizability, I think, adds a lot. Reusing of melodies in different contexts just works in tandem with everything else the hack offers. I don't know if I could really explain my feelings on this that well, but by connecting these moments and areas to recognizable melodies from all different parts of the series, it just makes it more comforting, more authentic of an experience. It makes it feel more homely, I guess. I'm sorry if I didn't get my thoughts on that across that well. I have no idea how to explain this, but just know that I find this aspect extremely fascinating. The fact that Heck is restricted to only using the SM64 sound font is also worth mentioning, since when used right, it can be so playful and warm. It's a feeling that I'm really glad Chris wanted to illustrate, or at least I think he wanted to, and it does it really well. A theme like Parallel Lobby, for example, really well encapsulates that kind of innocent wonder that this game brings out of me when it's not being spooky and ambient. Solar Tower 2, I want to mention, I already love the area visually, but the music makes me go feral, like I swear to God. However, the game also has moments where it does call for a more dark ambient theme to be used, and the way it stretches this sound font to its absolute limits to create this atmosphere is honestly so admirable to me. How they're able to make spookier tracks with such old and limiting sound font that are this unnerving is really cool. I love this game's OST. I've said that I like how this game uses liminal spaces as less of a horror trope, at least I don't think it does, and more as a way to build the surreal and nostalgic quality of the game. But that doesn't mean that this game is afraid to make you a little afraid. It's not a full-on horror game, I wouldn't say, but it has some horror moments sprinkled throughout it to make you feel a little uneasy, like someone's watching you or gonna pop out at you or something. I don't know. One of the most common type of horror event that stuck with me is the long pitch black hallway with a thing at the end that you run to. There are a few of these in the game, and each time you do pretty much the same thing, but they do good at building unnecessary tension and whatnot. And in my initial playthroughs, I never really got over them. Now the magic of these have kind of been lost a bit as time has gone on, but that's entirely because I've played this hack like 20,000 100 jillion times at this point. In my first playthrough in particular, this one after you drain the moat in the vanilla basement, I remember just really got to me for some reason. There isn't anything particularly unique or interesting about this one aside from the fact you have to swim through a corridor first. But I don't know, there was something about this one that really freaked me out. I can't really put a finger on why, it's just did. Another spooky thing that I like is not an event, it's a hub. This is probably the most uncomfortable hub in the game, and it's almost entirely because of the music. It's like the song is just barely pulling itself along, it's stuck in mud or something. The string notes seem deafeningly loud and overbearing, and they're so deep that it feels like they're just grinding against something. The absence of anything other than the strings makes it even more uncomfortable. I don't think something like this, where it's just a slower version of a regular song, would usually do anything for me, but this theme honestly pulls it off so well, and it works in tandem with the hub itself really nicely. Walking around floor 2B, I can't help but feel like this place is just really desperately trying to replicate the castle, but they're just forgetting the intricacies and design choices that make it so welcoming, and it just feels like it's taking the textures and paintings and gluing them all together hoping you'll look at it, and just because it's made of familiar wallpaper and paintings you'll just be like, yeah. Not too dissimilar to what the song is like. This area feels like it's trying its hardest to keep up this facade no matter what. It knows it's kind of falling apart and the music is just barely churning along, but it's desperately trying to get you not to suspect anything. Also, something that made this infinitely more uncomfortable was the fact that I had the game audio much louder on RetroArch, which normally doesn't affect anything, so I never bothered bringing it back down. But one thing it did affect was the music for floor 2B. Deep, distorted noise is one of the only things that can consistently make me deeply uncomfortable. And when the game audio started sounding more like this, I don't know, it kind of got to me a little bit, like maybe a little bit. Anyways, those are the two instances where I think the game succeeded in its goal of making you uneasy, even if one of them was partially due to me having my game too loud. The other scary occurrences are in the form of the spooky entities that occasionally appear and do something a little frightening, like crash your game or whatever, I don't know. There are two main ones, the Faceless Mario and the Shadow Mario. Faceless Mario, you know, I think he's fine, he's okay, right? But Shadow Mario kind of goes hard. I'm not gonna lie. It scratches this hyper niche itch I have that before this had only ever been scratched by like Treasure Island character designs, more specifically the Breaking the Magic series. Like this guy 100% has the same aura as those edgy, grungy, creepypasta designs that can only come out of the mind of like this guy, maybe, I don't know. Like look at how this guy sits and then look at the pose he hits after turning the ground to lava. Like this is peak creepy, like this is a guy who hides on Cam 9 and only appears every blue moon on a Sunday. I'm aware none of what I just said made any sense. He specifically looks the most like Fear from Art of Animation, but he also reminds me of the Coverts from Breaking the Magic. I love these stupid fan games with my whole being, I don't know if you can tell. My first few play sessions of B3, I didn't really like these guys that much. I honestly thought they took away from the experience, but now, if anything, I feel like they're really integral to why I love this hack so much, even if I personally don't get much fear-wise out of opening a door to see Faceless Marios. Like, I grew up on these silly and really amateurish EXE games and horror web series, and B3 kind of hits a similar spot for me, and in a weird way is really nostalgic. Cheesy internet horror stuff like this always gets to me, both stuff like B3, which is a more modernized kind of version of it, and authentic, real old creepypasta stuff. Like, I'm someone who's been completely obsessed with lowmando.com since I first saw it. Initially because I thought it was probably the scariest thing ever created, and now because I just find it interesting and fun and silly and all that. But even when I first discovered this site, I loved its aesthetic, and I obviously still do. It scratches a different but equally as itchy hyper niche itch that I have, this time for old flash point and click games of questionable quality. But that questionable quality of it makes it feel very human and down to earth. Like this is a real silly little website someone made to scare you, and I don't know why, but that just makes me like it a little more, even if it's not the scariest thing ever. And like, yeah, in a way, that's kind of how I view V3's entities. In my younger days, I also gravitated so much to these niche FNAF fan games. I'd watch old The Next Genius and Game Sim and playthroughs of just the most obscure and random things they could find. I seriously don't know if I can properly articulate how heartwarming it is to see both these channels still making videos, by the way. These guys defined an era of my life. I think if either of them stopped making videos, I'd actually cry. I couldn't really tell you why I love stuff like Five Nights at Powerpuff Girls and Creepypasta Land so much, or why they've stuck with me for my entire life and have such a special place in my heart. All I know is that B3 in a way reminds me a bit of that kind of stuff, the stuff I grew up on. And even if it isn't necessarily the prime example of a modern piece of horror art that really scratches that itch, I still felt it was worth recognizing and talking about. So that's what I think of the horror section of this game. I hope that was at all interesting and coherent. If you were wondering, this game does have an ending, and it's not even that hard to get to. All you need is 30 stars and the knowledge, which is probably harder to obtain than the 30 stars, to be honest. So you start off by going to Bowser's floor and entering the double doors to the left of the Peach painting. This will take you through a linear sequence of areas leading up to the final Bowser level. Most of them mainly feel like they are there just to build up tension towards the final level, which is fine, but a few of them actually have some pretty well done atmospheres and are really memorable. The Blood River place in particular I actually really like. I think it's designed really well. The black skybox and thick fog just get my tail wagging. It's a very ominous area. I like it. The Bowser level is pretty normal, except the entire world is collapsing in on itself. At least that's the vibe I think it's going for. And I think it's pretty lame, honestly. It feels really out of character for the hack to have the final level be this weird apocalyptic event, right? Like, this hack is so minimalistic and subdued and mysterious, so having the final level be all grandiose and epic just kind of feels really weird. It's also incredibly jarring to go from the really enclosed spaces that take up a majority of this game to one that's just so open. The use of just a regular vanilla Mario 64 skybox doesn't really help either. This place just lacks a lot of that specific B3 feel, and it's really the only area in this game that I don't really like. The actual Bowser fight is pretty cool, and it fortunately fits in a lot more. It's got the fog, the kind of Mario 64 skybox, the gross textures. I feel so at home again. B3, because it's so interesting and silly and fun, makes it so instead of just one arena, there's two of them that are connected to each other, and you have to throw Bowser up to the other arena for the final hit, which is something I thought would be interesting since before I played this hack, so that's pretty neat, I guess. So you kill Bowser, you beat the game, and the princess is saved. Good job. But here I bring up a question that I've been thinking about recently. Would B3313 be better if it didn't have an ending like this? Because honestly, if you asked me, I'd say yes. I feel like something that would fit in with the hack a lot more would just be having no conclusion to the game, cementing it as this inescapable nowhere zone where you'll never really know if you've seen all of it. I think B3 is a game that ends whenever you lose interest, whenever you get bored of running around or feel like you've seen everything that you can. Yet, after turning the game off for the last time, you'll still wonder, did I see everything? Was there an ending? What more does the castle contain that I never saw? I feel like leaving the player with these questions and never truly giving them an answer to them would be a much cooler way to end the game. Obviously, Chris can do whatever he wants. I don't care. He can like delete the entire hack and dox everyone who played it. You know, what am I gonna do? But if I was in charge of this game, that's just how I do it. I'm gonna end this section about 0.7 by answering a question I bet everyone would ask themselves after playing something like this. What does it even mean? And my answer is enthralling, to say the least. Personally, I like to think this hack doesn't represent anything substantial. I don't believe it has a story. I didn't come to any profound conclusions on a theme. To me, it feels more like a thing that just exists as it is, no plot line, just a dream you had that doesn't really mean anything in specific. It's kinda lame and simple, but honestly thinking that way while I played was what got me most invested in its world. I love just believing this is what your brain thought up one night, and it's just kind of on display in this weird, confusing museum. That thought process of mine was constantly backed by the hack's ability to replicate so many little quirks of dreaming through its design and aesthetic. I know there's stuff with AI personalization, and there's the entities, and probably a story tying everything together, but honestly the design and world of this game was what kept me coming back, what really kept me invested, what made me think about this game constantly for a year. I really wanted to derive something more from this game and from 1.0, but every conclusion I came to regarding the story just didn't feel right. It didn't feel true to how I really felt about this hack and the ways in which it connected with me personally. So yeah, there's my very simple answer to a arguably really important question. Next part. Hi. I felt like putting like an unscripted intermission in between the two big sections of this video. Just to like say a few things. First off, like, genuinely thank you for watching this video and getting this far. This project has taken like an entire chunk out of my life, and it's taken me a lot of time to like really get down how I feel about this game, and even then it still feels like I'm missing a bunch of stuff and it's kind of hard to understand. So the fact that you're kind of here, it's cool and stuff, so thank you for that. Also, the second half of this video, you know, the part about version 1.0, is a lot less like talking about the game as a whole and like going through each section of it, or like category, I guess, and talking about like what it means to me as a whole, and more so just kind of listing off every new thing that I have a substantial enough opinion on to talk about, which is quite a few of them. So it's probably gonna be even more disjointed than the first half, so sorry about that. And I'm also sorry about the the really long rant that kicks off this part. I usually try not to be super negative, and I don't want to be negative in my videos really much anymore. And this is probably the last video I'll make that really has like a super deep rant about something. But yeah, I kind of needed to say some things, and I don't mean it like in a mean way. I hope it doesn't come off that way. I think I've made it clear that I have a ton of respect for like this hack and whatever. I don't know why I'm trying to justify it, but yeah, don't take it mean-spirited. It comes from a place of love. I swear. Okay, next part. So, in the middle of making this video, the final version of V3 released. However, before this, an abandoned, unfinished version of it was released, aptly titled Abandoned Version 0.9. And apparently had some stuff that didn't reflect how Chris wanted B3, and therefore 0.9 and 1.0 have several differences compared to each other. And I spent a lot of time in 0.9 before the final version was officially released. So if I talk about something that's only in 0.9 but it was fixed or removed in 1.0, sorry. Anyways, this and 0.7 have very different feels, not just in their size, but in how they're played as well. The most prominent culprit behind why being the fact that you're just taken back out of the painting after getting a star. And the only time you're brought back to the hallway after getting a star is if the entrance to that specific level wasn't a painting. And I found this really annoying. So annoying that when playing 0.9, I just assumed it did this because the game was unfinished and some weird bug came up mid-development that they didn't know how to fix at the time. Which, in hindsight, is weird to think because hopping back out of the painting is just what's supposed to happen. I guess I was just in denial or something. When I saw that a finished version had been released, the first thing I checked was if it still did this, and it still does. Now, as someone who's mostly playing this version to see what new things have been added that I can talk about, this was honestly more helpful than anything. However, looking at this from the perspective of someone who just started playing, I really don't like it that much. Like, the whole hallway thing was like one of the defining things that set this hack apart from its contemporaries, the thing that effortlessly created intrigue and wonder from the player. Why did they think it needed to be dumbed down like this? And that thought really bothered me. Like, I've written about how much I loved that aspect of the game, how it was what kept me intrigued and wanting to rediscover things that I barely remembered. It's what made areas of the game feel like these fading memories. It felt so right for a hack with this kind of atmosphere, but it was just reduced down to a diet version of itself. I mean, yeah, 1.0 is frankly huge, and because of that you're going to forget things, but I feel like that emphasis on forgetting, on never letting the player truly grasp the extent of the castle, is just not as prominent in this version. Forgetting about how to get to courses feels way less intentional and more so just a byproduct of the game's size now. You could say this is a dumb tangent because at the end of the day it's still there, just with a much smaller impact, but most of the time you're entering an area from a painting. So like only 40% of the courses don't boot you from the painting. But even then, the more I think about it, the more I feel like what was done here is arguably worse than if it was just removed entirely, because now there's a divide between courses that won't remove progress and ones that will. And once the player catches on to that divide, I feel it'll be harder for them to want to go into these progress erasing courses. It isn't an unavoidable consequence of simply playing the game like in 0.7 anymore. You can just choose not to go in these areas. And I feel like a lot of players will choose to do that. So now there's just a whole chunk of the game that they'll be less willing to explore. With the removal of this mechanic, it'll be a lot harder for them to have that realization I had in Creepy Cove. What if I never find this place again? Yeah, I still forget things, but it doesn't really hit as hard. I can just go back into the level if I get a star or die. It doesn't really matter. This doesn't just affect how the player chooses which courses to enter though, it affects how they interact with the courses they do pick. Unless you got there through means other than a painting, you won't be as encouraged to thoroughly explore the given area. If you see a star, you can just get it and immediately go back in. You're not encouraged to take in the environment as much or look around in case you missed anything. This change just as a whole makes it harder to appreciate sending you back as a mechanic because it's not as integral to the game experience. It's just a thing that happens in specific courses that the player doesn't have to enter if they don't want to. Maybe it's just me, but this weirdly feels unintentional. It feels like a bug to me. I really don't want to act like I know better than Chris. That's the last thing I'd want to do. But if I was in control, I would have changed this back. This aspect of 1.0 is easily the most annoying to me. Even if the central idea is still there in some capacity, it's kept in such a lame way that literally creates more problems than if the whole mechanic were to just be removed. Given what I have just said, it's obvious that this was the thing that initially deterred me from playing more of the abandoned version when I first became aware of it. It might have just been because of burnout. I was playing a lot at the time. But still, in that first hour of playing 0.9, I could tell something was off. Coming back to B3 again for this video, I obviously still think this aspect is annoying, but I've come to find things in this version I do like, and for the rest of this video I'm mainly going to be focusing on that. But first, there's some basic stuff I gotta ramble about beforehand. Starting up 1.0, the first thing you'll probably notice is that your controls are much more limited than usual. You can only jump, dive, ground pound, do a much worse version of the side flip, double, and spin triple jump. Don't worry though, there's a way to get your moves back, and that's through red stars, which are basically just more important stars, and they're usually obtained by beating a boss or some other more esoteric activity compared to regular stars. You also have a new move, which replaces the slide kick. The first time I saw it, I honestly thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. Not only because it caught me extremely off guard, but also it just looks really silly. Doing it off a cliff I find to be even funnier. As much as I'd love to say this move is like incredibly useful and a key part of your moveset, it's kind of worthless. Yeah, you can chain it into dives over and over as a way to move quickly, but like long jumping is less finger work and produces basically the same results. So it kind of sucks, unfortunately. You also probably noticed the new animation for the side flip made so it looks more accurate to how it did in the betas. It's a neat touch. Also new is the soft bird chirping ambience outside the castle. I'm not sure why it was added or if it even fits, but it's nice. So I think it's fine. Maybe it's some type of mind trick, either on the player or Mario, to lull them into a false sense of security. Like full creepypasta mode. Like maybe we're going that route. I mean, just listening to it passively in an area you're probably going to spend a good 10 seconds in, it's no big deal, but paying attention to it, it's such a short loop, it really doesn't fit the scenery at all, and it feels like way too high quality of an audio file to be in SM64. It's just another little thing that makes the track feel so disconnected and alien. Another new thing in this game is the day and night cycle. From what I played, it usually just makes the levels have a nighttime skybox as well as a sleepier music box rendition of whatever song plays in the level. Most of the time the music change works fine to give these levels more of a nighttime aesthetic. But in the case of a level like Dry Town, I think it actually kind of hurts it. The music box versions are fine when the theme isn't the most atmospheric thing ever, but the atmosphere of Dry Town song is like so important to it. This slow, less dense and more stripped back version of it just doesn't really compare at all. It's lame. I don't like it. It's not just that, but removing the fog and changing the skybox just makes this course feel so nothing. I get what it was going for, but I just think it doesn't work at all, and it wouldn't work even if it didn't have a superior version of itself to compare to. They've also gone and added an actual star tracker for it, for those playing on Parallel Launcher, and to me it is utterly useless, and I honestly think its inclusion is a little out of character for the hack. The star tracker just being broken and not in any way helpful fit in line a lot more with the mysterious and half-baked feeling. And I think worrying about checking this tracker kind of breaks up the pace of the game a lot, especially since you have to scroll through like what, over 100 courses in a game where course names aren't even given. I don't know, I don't really like it that much. Anyways, running into the castle, the game starts off quite differently from 0.7. Instead of entering the regular castle lobby, you're brought to a version of it with only one door in the center. The painting behind this door takes you to an empty version of Womp's fortress with a completely blacked out skybox. Getting to start at the top of the fortress, you're taken to an identical Womp's fortress except a thick layer of gray fog has been added, as well as a timer. Also, playing recently, I feel like it's bigger. Is it bigger? I don't think the timer does anything. I'm pretty sure it's just there to scare you, or maybe I'm just too good and I never took too long. Getting to the top again, you're met with your first red star. Hopping out of the painting, you go back to the lobby only to realize the door has been blocked by bricks. I can only assume this is here as a way to teach you how to use the fast travel system, and I don't really get why. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It feels strange to me to include a tutorial in a game like this. By forcing you to fast travel, it kind of takes away from that first moment where you realize you can use it. You can say that this means nothing because it tells you how to fast travel in the pause menu, but now you go straight into the game knowing this rather than discovering an entirely new layer of the game on your own when you thought it couldn't get any more confusing. This game has had zero hand-holding up until this point, assumedly to create those kinds of moments. And I think that's a really good decision, but having a tutorial like this feels really weird to me. It's not like this completely ruins everything, but it does get on my nerves a small bit, and it's just another thing that contributes to this kind of lack of confidence almost in the ideas brought up in 1.7. I really don't know why stuff was changed in this way. Also, sometimes this entire sequence just doesn't even happen. I don't know, man. I don't know. Okay, I know I've said barely anything positive so far, but like all the bile is out of my system, okay? The rest of this segment is positive, I promise. I just have very strong feelings on that. Okay, next part. After that short tutorial, you'll be playing this hack mostly the same way you were for 0.7, except there's just a lot more. Like a lot, like, oh my god. Playing this game after spending a lot of time in 0.7 is honestly such a cathartic experience, because you're going to be seeing a lot of new stuff, and the hubs that return from 0.7 and how you get to them aren't changed much, so you won't have to do too much relearning. Everything in this version just feels bigger, the ideas are pushed further, courses are a lot more detailed, and there's new stuff in basically every level, like new enemies and NPCs or whatever. It's a bit jarring to see them after having spent so much time in the vanilla wastelands of 0.7, and I kinda hated this aspect of 1.0 initially, but after getting used to all the new stuff, I honestly like them a lot more, and they serve a good purpose given the whole collage of various unrelated things from different game stream thing. And it's not like the 0.7 style levels are just gone completely. It's funny though, you can usually tell when a level or hub was added in 1.0. It likes to experiment a bit more with its concepts and course themes, a lot more than 0.7 did. And hubs have numerous sections to them that look visually distinct, but are still considered the same hub area, compared to 0.7, which usually kept it very repetitive. It's honestly so fun to compare how courses and hubs look in both versions. Like 0.7 usually keeps it super stripped back, while 1.0 is just so expressive. 1.0's lack of fear for experimenting with course ideas and structuring leads to some of the most memorable levels to come out of B3. One of my favorites is this ghost mansion. It's just a very linear key grabbing puzzle type thing where each room has its own little challenge and a ghost you have to kill for a key that lets you into the next room. There are also these eyes that'll bum rush you instantly if they see you in these little booby traps. It's so goofy. I love it. It has so much character. The music is great too and captures this level's very silly, unserious vibe. I also like this one Bay lighthouse area connected to one of the Jolly Roger Bay courses. The music box version of its theme is the best nighttime theme of any level in the game by a mile. I think I like it so much because the notes are just a lot deeper compared to how Dire Dire Docks actually sounds. I think it, I don't really know what the, like, it's just kind of like more like toned down and like mellowy. I don't really know how, I don't have a good way to really describe it. And I also like the subtle white noise, but I don't know, it's just nice, and it's probably the one music box rendition that portrayed that drowsy, sleepy sound best for me. The level itself is nice too. Very fun to be in. Having any kind of body of water in your level is enough to get me kicking my feet, but I also really love the skybox and the textures as well. It has its own shell theme too, which is pretty neat. Like, there's obviously so much time and love poured into this one, and it really shows. This is one hub I really like that reminds me of this dream I had about Hello Neighbor. They don't relate to each other at all, but in my mind they give off the exact same vibe. So thank you, Chris, for bringing that dream back into my mind, I guess. Another one of my favorite levels is this dark city that feels like Dry Town, but just inverted. Like, Dry Town is dusty, warm, and orange, while this one's foggy, cold, and blue. They're just perfect contrasts. I wonder why they feel so similar. Clean up an aisle, city. So you can flood this town for a reward too, except this time there's not really anyone there to stop you, and the only guy that probably could, you can just pick him up and kill him for another star, which is honestly kind of funny. Maybe it's so barren because all the residents are hiding from you because they know you're all dastardly and whatever. There's this other star you get where you destroy this guy's books that he specifically tells you to be careful with. Like, Mario's the bad guy theory has never been stronger. I also want to mention this course that's like this ancient Mesoamerican city of some sorts. I love the colors in it, the tan buildings and floor with its pure red sky. It goes unreasonably hard. To me, it feels like a mix of all the things I liked about each version. The more out there and creative course ideas of 1.0 and the minimalistic design of 0.7. It titillates every single sense. There's also this little bum guy up here who tells you not to go near the temple because the rivers will overflow and flood the whole city. If you go near the temple, the rivers overflow and flood the whole city. It also changes the Bob-omb's dialogue.
I see what they meant about monsters of red and greed now. Just if...
Damn, man. I'm pretty sure flooding is such a prevalent theme throughout this hack because of Wet Dry World, given that it is canonically a town that flooded. And Wet Dry World is just a generally popular level in the online beta creepypasta community for being so mysterious. So having flooding be so prevalent makes sense. I also think it's just like cool. Like, these are little alternate universe versions of Wet Dry World, ones where it could have been an ancient Aztec city or something more like the inverted Dry Town I mentioned a little bit ago. One more area I want to mention before talking about my favorite is this grassy one. And I'm only mentioning it because the scratchy ground texture actually makes me drool. Like, oh my god. Okay. My favorite new area is the solar tower. I already mentioned it when talking about the hack's music like 4 years ago or however long ago that was. But I want to mention it again now. There's this very specific kind of peaceful, melancholic state that I'm put into whenever I go here. The muted gray clouds in front of the pure white sky, the music, the cute little statue. I don't know, there's something about it. Just a very nice place to exist in. Gives me the same feeling that the album cover for Sweet Trip's Holico Bliss Out version 11 gives. Now, with new courses comes new hubs and castle areas too. So I'm gonna talk about the ones I like. One hub that I saw when looking through the game's OST and always wanted to find was the Internal Garden. What a cozy little area this is. It's honestly interesting how the hubs of this game are so much more vibrant and lively than 0.7. I still think the 0.7 hubs are comforting in their own weird ways, but some of these 1.0 hubs just have so much life and color. And then in 0.7, every hub is like a plane with some walls, and that's pretty much it. I also love the music here with this little MIDI guitar and piano. Like, this place is just so pleasant, you know? Makes me feel at home. That is until you go past the mirror and confront stage 4 Uncanny Luigi painting. Oh, hello! Mr. Incredible's calling. The courses here are pretty relaxing too, like this woodland foresty stage where you fly through rings for a star. I thought this one was really cute. There's also the Nebula lobby, which was the main thing that kept me playing through this version instead of instantly just writing it off as a waste of time. This place has this nice Starry Night vibe and such a peppy and vibrant song to boot. It also just feels so distinguished compared to everything else. Like, even stuff in 1.0, I can actually imagine this being a real area in SM64. It's got actual class and some regality to it. The courses housed here are some of my favorites too. This sky island with rainbow bridges I've always liked, as well as this little ice ravine thing that the Bob-ombs hike in. You can see their little tents and stuff at the bottom. It's really cute. There's also this very vertical factory where you run from rising lava. I don't know why this is in the game. It doesn't fit at all, but it's pretty fun. I could keep listing courses, but there's so many, and I like pretty much all of them, so I just start repeating myself. Just take away from this that despite my issues with 1.0, this hack still has a lot of really fun and cool shit to explore. So, in like that regard, it's awesome. Okay, I'll move on to another topic now. Scary things that happened. Let's talk about those. I'll talk about two specific instances I came across that have stuck with me since I encountered them. And Funnily enough, both of them happened within like 20 minutes of each other. I'll start with the one that happened first. Obviously, Captain Obvious calling. I was around 10 minutes into a session, and I was already considering turning it off at this point. This hack isn't something you're going to be in the mood for every day anyways, and at this point I was starting to feel like today just wasn't really the day. I kept playing though, in case something did happen, and after leaving this water cave area, that in hindsight I actually really like, I wandered around this hub for a minute or so before leaving, and one of the most cartoonish sequence of events played out before my very eyes. Instantly, I became interested again, and after fiddling with the fast travel system, I get back to where I was, except I don't fall into a booby trap this time. Going up to the peach, she just fades away. It's, you know, pretty mysterious, pretty spooky. And I just kind of thought that's what it was. Now, I don't know if this next part was because of the door I went through, or because of me touching the peach, but after she faded away, the music became noticeably slower. This genuinely freaked me out really bad, and I honest to God thought that a crusty N64 quality screamer was just gonna pop up on my screen any second. It for some reason just created so much tension, and I don't even know if it was supposed to be scary. Like, is the music in that room just slower and I just hadn't noticed until this very moment where I was really focused on what would happen after I touched the peach? Or is that just like a random thing that can happen and it just so happened to fall into this perfect scripted moment? Whatever it was, it really recaptured my interest in playing more of the hack. Then like a month later, I'm playing again, and the same song slowdown thing happens randomly. So I guess just like 10 planets all aligned for this specific event to trigger after interacting with a completely foreign entity. And it was just completely unintentional, yet it managed to be such a memorable moment of my time playing. That's kind of why I think stuff like this should always have like random stuff, like random little things that can happen and just like make something special and personalized. The other one was after I fell into Bowser's bedroom and went through this door. I ended up in this winding maze type of area, completely silent save for a quiet droning noise. It's obviously coming from something. It changes which ear it's in depending on where you position the camera, but what it is, you don't really know. This doesn't even really feel like a sound that can be produced by an N64. As I walked through the area, every footstep and camera turn felt so loud as I tried to focus on this droning, if it changed, if it got louder. Eventually I found a door, and on the other side was the most beautiful scenic area of the entire game. Like, okay, thank you. Because I'm a dumbass, I immediately fell in a hole and died. By the way. So I didn't get to stay in it much long. I didn't get to stay in it very long. So those were the two specific events that stuck out to me the most. There's more of them. This one where the face on the lethal lava painting just comes off and there's no sound or anything. I really like this one because of how it's not even acknowledged by the game in any way through a stinger or anything. And I bet someone out there had a fear of this thing and would have nightmares about it. That seems entirely possible to me. So that's everything I wanted to say about B3313. Its worlds, its design, how it personally connected with me, and what I ended up taking from it. It only took 19 gracious Google document pages. I don't know if I really need to say this again, but I really did love playing this hack. Both versions of it. 0.7 will probably forever be my favorite of the two. It may not have the detailed and fun worlds of 0.1, but the atmosphere and how much it connected with me, how it made me feel, what it made me think, will always be really important to me. The way that the areas of 0.7 look, how empty they are, the textures all being in seemingly different art styles, yet all feeling like textures that be in the real game, the size of them. It's also comforting to me in a very weird way. I look back at the times I played this hack at like midnight with the lights off, and I just remember it being so cozy to run around this world, even with how confusing it was. And those moments of finding a level that really connected with me were so exciting and have stuck with me for so long. Even though I only played this version like a year ago, it still feels weirdly nostalgic. Not like the creepypasta nostalgic I was talking about earlier or anything, but B3313 nostalgic. That kind of feeling 0.7 gave me is unfortunately a little lost in 1.0 with its more detailed areas that have more NPCs, textures, and variety, alongside the removal of sending you back to the hallway. Not to really discredit 1.0 in any way, that's like seriously the last thing I want to do, 1.0 is great in its own silly little ways. Its sheer size is enough to warrant you play through it if you haven't already, and 1.0 definitely has a lot more character and charm to it. I really do love both of them for what they provide though, even if my love for one of them is much more apparent. And 1.0 being almost the face of romhacking.com now, given that it's the most downloaded hack on the site, makes me really happy and excited. Excited for more cool stuff to be made in the SM64 engine and for people to be inspired by this thing. If you're looking for more B3 content, this video by Ducklex and this one by M4M4 are probably my favorites I've watched, so go check those out. If you're looking for a playthrough type series, Big Dip on a Bus has a super interesting playthrough of 1.0 where you get a bunch of insider info on little quirks and things that happen during development, which is really neat. I'd highly recommend watching it. Simple Flip's video is also great, obviously, and what got me into the game in the first place, so go watch that too. But I probably don't have to tell you, you probably already have. I wanted to end this video on a short little thought I had that didn't really wrap up my thoughts in any way, but it ended the video on what I thought was a pretty nice note. Originally, I had planned to talk about how the fact that this is inherently kind of a silly idea for a ROM hack, and that makes the actually really impactful stuff hit even harder. But I feel like that kind of undermines this hack a little bit. I don't think the impactful moments of this game needed anything to make them stand out more than they already do. They're already so effective. The team behind this hack is so wonderfully talented, and the passion poured into it really shows, even if it's not really the scariest thing ever, and it's a little cliche at moments, and you kind of need to be really online to enjoy it with the whole liminal vibe creepypasta thing. I still think the atmosphere, the world, and the gameplay of this hack are just so great. And even the silly parts of this game are done in a way that feels so real. The creepypasta-ness is just making it feel more down-to-earth and nostalgic in a way. And the liminal aesthetics are portrayed in such a great way that really differentiates this hack and its atmosphere. I don't know if there's really been a piece of fan content that just so consistently enticed me, comforted me, and unnerved me all at the same time. And I love B3313 for that. I love B3313 for being this thing that appeals to present me and younger me, the me that spent all their time watching niche YouTubers play even nicher horror fan games, the me that eats up surreal fevered dreamy art like I've gone 3 weeks without food, the me that just enjoys exploring a big world with no strict restrictions, the me that just wants to exist in a space that I find comfort in, the me that lost sleep over a Lomando screamer. There's something there for all of those versions of me. I don't know if I've really said it directly, but this hack just resonates with me so deeply to a point where it almost feels like it was made specifically for me. Like Mario 64 was just personalized or something. That'd be pretty crazy, I think. Someone should do something with that idea. That's probably a better note to leave this necessarily long video off on. I hope what I said in this connected with you in some way. Thanks for watching. Bye.